Hello everyone, today we're going to solve set 7, problems 15 and 16. Problem 15. Which one, when folded, will cover the rectangle perfectly without overlapping? Now, I have drawn the lines for each triangle's height because it is quite hard to select that line and then copy it. So, looking at A, it has a longer width of triangle compared to the shorter ones. So I'm going to copy the longer line, and I'm going to show you that it fits perfectly. And then when we fold it, it must be like this. Now you can see that it is folded until halfway, which should be something like this when it is folded. Same for the opposite side. And for the top and bottom triangles, we have a shorter triangle compared to the other ones. So I'm going to copy this line, and then again, as you can see, it fits perfectly. And then when we fold it, it's going to be like this, which matches perfectly. So A is the correct answer. And if you look at other questions, other options, you can see that they would cross over each other. So for example, B, the top and the bottom triangle would intersect each other, so it is not perfectly folded. And for D, it is the same case. Actually, D is a bit different, where we have the shorter width, and it doesn't reach until the middle, so there will be some empty spaces when it is folded. E is the same reason as B. It has a longer triangle, and they will intersect each other like this. For C, it has the same reason as D. It has two short triangles, so when it is folded, there will be some empty space in the middle. So we confirm that A is the correct answer. Problem 16. Only one of the following statements is true. Which one? Now, I'm going to show you all cases to make understand better. Now, let's assume A is true. Then A says B is true. But then the question says only one of those statements is true. But then if you assume A is true, then there will be two statements that are true. So A cannot be the correct option. Now, let's assume B is correct. And it says E is false. Okay, we're good until here. E is false. Then E is saying A is false. But then if E is saying something false, that means that A is true. And again, we have two truths. So B cannot be the correct statement. Now, let's assume C is true. And if C is true, statements A to E are true, which means that all statements are true. And that is not the correct option. Let's assume D is true. And it says statements A to E are false. But then if statement A to E are false, then that would mean D itself is false, and it's a self-contradiction. So D cannot be correct answer. Now we only have E, option E left. Now let's check if it is true. E says A is false. Okay, A is false. And A is saying that B is false, because it is saying something opposite. So B is false. And B is saying E is false, which means that because B is lying, E is just something true. Now let's check option statement C and D. Statement C says statements A to E are true, but then we have two falses here. So statement C is false. Statement D says statements A to E are false, but then we have one true here, so it is false. Now, when option E is true, then there's only one statement that is true, So E is the correct answer. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you again. Bye.